Finally, the return of the Premier League. Despite us being spoiled by having a World Cup year, aka less time without competitive football over the summer, the 4-ish weeks between the final and the start of the season have felt like a long 4-ish weeks. So, with that in mind, it's time to get acquainted with everyone who will be fighting for the Premier League supremacy, or to simply stay afloat. What's up? My name is Adrian, and welcome to Rabona TV. As mentioned, in this one we'll be looking ahead to the Premier League and going team by team to preview and predict where everyone will be in the standings come May 2019. And if you've been here before, then you'll know I did alright with my predictions last season. And remember guys, these are just what I think will happen and not what I wish to happen. So just stay positive and tell me where you think your team will end up, who the champions will be, who will get relegated, etc. Aight? Oh, and I'll show you my final table at the end. Of course, I show you mine, you show me yours. Okay? Let's get started with Fulham. Fulham are back, as teams will be heading back to play at the stadium with my favorite name, Craven Cottage. Why do I love it? Because Craven, of course, means contemptibly lacking courage. Of course, Craven Cottage is actually named after the original home that is still on the grounds to this day, which was built by Lord Craven in 1780. Maybe instead of just talking about Fulham, I'll go on about the history of Craven Cottage. It's interesting. Maybe a video for another day though. Would you guys be into that? The rich history of famous football grounds? I think that could be cool. Anyways, Fulham had a strong showing in the championship last season, finishing in third and going on to win the promotion playoffs over Aston Villa, with now 18-year-old Ryan Sessegnon garnering heaps of praise and hype throughout the season, in which he scored 16 goals as a left winger / wingback. That's pretty decent. And they have made some decent acquisitions this summer, most notably the purchase of Alexander Mitrovic, who spent the last season on loan with the club. They also brought in central midfielder Jean-Michael Seri, Alfie Mawson, the English centre-back, and Andre Schürrle in on loan, among others. With Jokanovic moving Fulham from 6th to 3rd and promotion into the Prem, coupled with the strong signings they have made this season, I think that Fulham will be one of the surprise packages of this season, grabbing onto 13th. Now I know that's not very high in the table, but I think they're gonna make some noise. Alright, let's move along and look at one of the big boys, nice and early. Chelsea, the late appointment of Maurizio Sarri after the long and drawn-out Antonio Conte debacle could yet hurt Chelsea. Remember, when the first team returned from holidays and began training, Conte took charge, only to get sacked days later and for Sarri to take over. Sarri will be hoping that he can implement his Sarri ball quickly, so that Chelsea don't fall too far down the standings. With the changes around the club, with Thibaut Courtois seemingly forcing his way out so that he can be in Madrid with his children, with the potential of Hazard being bought once the window is already closed, and with the only improvement on the squad being Jorginho to partner Conte in the midfield, it could be a tough first season for Sarri. I hope he lasts, as he was a slow starter with Napoli, but they kept the faith and he managed to implement one of the prettiest playing styles in all of Europe, while challenging Juventus almost all the way for the Scudetto. I do think that Chelsea will have a problem in the striking department if all of their faith is put into Alvaro Morata, who still looks as if he's shook from last season. He started brightly last season, but fell off majorly, blowing tons of chances that should be in the back of the net on any other day with any other striker seemingly. This preseason has been no better for him, and for Chelsea's sake, perhaps giving Michy Batshuayi the chance would be a good judgment call from Sarri. I like what Jorginho brings, as he's an intelligent player and a tidy passer, but if Chelsea were to lose either Willian or Hazard, I would fear for them. Another tough one for Chelsea, as they will end up in 6th, challenging for nothing but the Champions League places and perhaps a domestic cup. Be patient with Sarri though, Abramovich. I know you're watching. And give him a chance. And now, West Ham. I'm actually going to a Hammers game this month, which I cannot wait for, man. Anyways, I think that West Ham will get European football this season. Not the Champions League, no, not quite. But given the acquisitions they have made over the summer, they are showing real signs of intent of bettering their 13th placed finish under Moyes last season. This year, with Manuel Pellegrini in charge, a guy who has won the Premier League and 2 League Cups with Manchester City before, I think that West Ham will play much better football. In fact, in their preseason, after losing their very first match, they're undefeated in 6 matches, winning 4 of them. I know it's preseason, the competition isn't the strongest, calm down, but there are some good signs there. Plus, with players like Jack Wilshere, Felipe Anderson, who was incredible for high-flying Lazio last season, Andrei Yarmolenko, Lucas Fabianski, and Issa Diop, West Ham isn't playing around this season. I think that once this team has gelled together and Pellegrini has found a system that works for them, if he can, they could be extremely strong. He managed to take Malaga to 4th on 2 occasions, remember them, as well as a Champions League quarterfinal, so he definitely knows how to be a disruptor, and he'll see over West Ham disrupting their way to a 7th placed finish. Alright, let's go up the road a ways to Watford. Watford started so well last season under Marco Silva, hit a rough patch once Everton had turned his head and he was sacked, and then ended up leveling out in 14th place. While they have lost Richarlison and Amrabat among others, they have brought in quite a few reinforcements, including Adam Messina from Bologna. Most importantly though, they held on to Gerard Deulofeu, who was a star performer for them when he was loaned to Watford last season from Barcelona, and seemingly have held on to Abdoulaye Doucouré. However, I think that this season could be more difficult than the last, with scoring goals being the biggest issue facing Javi Gracia. The lack of goals will end up hurting them, but it won't be fatal, as I see Watford ending this season in 16th. And now let's look at one of the newly promoted sides in Cardiff. Cardiff had a great season in the Championship, challenging Wolves early and throughout, and ending up just 9 points behind them by the time May 6th had rolled around. Neil Warnock is one of the classic characters in English football, and a widely disliked one at that. But he doesn't care. Well, he has now led 8 teams to promotion of some sort, either from League One up to Championship or Championship to the Premier League, but his Premier League record isn't great after bad spells with Queen's Park Rangers, Sheffield United, and Crystal Palace. They've added Josh Murphy and Bobby Reed with the hopes of bolstering their attack, but I'm not sure that they'll have enough to stay up this season. Sure, they did finish higher than Fulham last season, but Warnock's disdain for the Premier League will ultimately be hard on Cardiff. This is a guy who has said in the past that he prefers the, quote, muck and nettles of the Championship, and he later admitted that if he could fight for promotion in the league and then end up playing in the Championship once again, he would. I think he'll get his wish, and Cardiff will get relegated in 18th place. 5 teams done already, as we move along to a team that will be challenging to be in the top 4, Tottenham. Tottenham is a strange side. Mauricio Pochettino is still considered to be one of the best managers in the league by fans and pundits alike. For me, is he a good manager? Of course, especially when it comes to identifying younger talent and developing them. He's one of the best at that. But to be considered such a great manager, in my opinion at least, you have to win things. That's what the point of this sport is. And win things, Pochettino has not. Not sure why I'm speaking like Yoda. In his first 3 seasons as a manager for Spurs, the only piece of silverware that he has managed to pick up has been a few Manager of the Month awards, aka nothing for the team. That said, he has been their most successful manager in a long time, guiding them to 3 consecutive top 4 seasons. As far as player personnel, the young, raw Spurs squad that Pochettino inherited and assembled in his first 2 seasons is now older, more experienced, and better. In fact, during the World Cup in Russia, Tottenham had the most representatives in the semi-finals, and in fact, their players contributed more goals at the tournament than any other club. But despite this, Spurs haven't made a single signing at this point this summer, and with the window closing on August 9th, things aren't looking up in that regard. Last summer, their desperation signing was the largely useless Fernando Llorente. This summer, they look as though they could be bringing in Jack Grealish, but will that take them to the next level? Well, I don't know. With all of their fellow top 6 rivals improving their squads, Tottenham will be heavily reliant on the same old faces from before. Dele, Kane, Sung Hyung-min, Eriksen, etc. And Pochettino will be hopeful that with all of this time for his young charges to gel, he can guide them to their best yet finish, which would be a Premier League title. But with no improvements to the squad, no added competition for places, I feel that they will fall seriously short of the top 2 sides, but still manage a 3rd placed finish. Another promotee, you say? How about Wolves? Not that Spurs were a promotee, but Wolverhampton Wanderers, aka Wolves, and also Wolves. Oui. Now, I won't go on for long about them, as I have already dedicated an entire video to their rise from League One, to conquering the Championship, to the financials behind them, the link with George Mendes, or George Mendes, as some like to call him, and so on and so forth, etc. After making a ton of signings last summer and bringing in starlet players like Ruben Neves, Diogo Jota, Boli, and many more, This season, they have added some experience in João Moutinho to partner Neves in the middle of the park, added vastly experienced Portuguese keeper Rui Patricio, who at 30 has been a starter for Sporting for 10 years, and the number one for Portugal for almost as long, including his incredible performance during Euro 2016. Raul Alonso Jimenez was loaned in from Benfica to compete with Leo Bonatini for the starting striker position as well. Nuno Espírito Santo, the manager, has them playing some beautiful attacking football with a very dynamic 3-4-3 formation. I expect them to be the best of the promoted teams, by far, and I think that they definitely have the quality in the team and the ambition of the backroom staff to add even more to it. Couple that with a manager who is really beginning to hit his stride and the confidence from winning the championship last season, and I think that Wolves can hit 10th. All right, how about a team that's hoping to be plying their trade in the Europa League this season? Burnley. Burnley were the shock of last season as they ended up in 17th place, meaning they qualified for the Europa League qualifiers. This isn't a Europa League preview video, but Burnley did in fact win their round 2 qualifying tie against Aberdeen and move on to face Istanbul Başakşehir in the 3rd qualifying round, so good luck to them. Anyway, Sean Dyche managed to find a system that really worked with the players he has been afforded at Burnley, as they managed to concede only 39 goals, but scored only 36. Hey, they weren't exactly pretty to watch, but you gotta do what you gotta do to win, and it got them potentially into Europe. They aren't fully there yet, but they're close. They have thus far made just a single signing in club record centre-back Ben Gibson from Middlesbrough. And without further improvements in the next couple of days before the August 9th deadline, I can't see Burnley finishing any higher than 11th place. A drop for them, but still a respectable position. God. You getting tired yet? This will be a damn long video. But how about Brighton next? Similarly to Watford, Brighton's main issue could be a lack of killer instinct around the goal. While Pascal Gross was one of the best buys of the season last year, certainly the most economical, an over-reliance on him could prove to be Brighton's downfall this season, with Gross chipping in on almost 50% of Brighton's goals in the Premier League. They did bring in 2 strikers to help carry the load, with Florin Andone and Percy Tau arriving, though their best option goals-wise will likely be Alireza Yahabaksh. Apologies for the pronunciation there. But he was the Eredivisie's top scorer last season for AZ Alkmaar, notching 21 times in the league and once in the cup. However, the last time Chris Hughton was in the top flight with Norwich, he had a great first season and an extremely poor second. I feel like there's a case of deja vu on the cards, and Brighton will drop down 2 places from their 15th placed finish last year to 17th. All right, let's head up to Liverpool now to preview Everton, a team desperately lacking in some Sam Allardyce. Despite having a pretty weird season in which Ronald Koeman was sacked and Sam Allardyce at the tail end, Everton still managed to finish in 8th place. Pretty crazy considering how some Everton fans suffered watching their team. It was due to this that Everton once again slid into the DMs of Marco Silva, this time in a more ethical way, with the hopes that he can get Everton to play as his Watford team did from August to October, and his Hull City team did before that, who were relegated, though the majority of the damage was done by the time Silva had arrived. Everton has invested in their squad big time, with Richarlison being the marquee signing at an initial £35 million, potentially rising up to $50 million. That's big boy bucks. He was incredible under Marco Silva, but after he left, he struggled. He didn't score after November, nor did he even grab an assist since December 12th. Lucas Stein bolsters their back line. Sorry for the rhyme, again. He didn't get many opportunities at Barcelona, and I don't know if he alone will help with their defense enough. As far as their attack goes, I don't know how much of a difference Richarlison will make, given that he went missing from December to May of last year. Although with the departure of Rooney, Sigurdsson can play up in Rooney's position, which is where he prefers to play. Despite that, I think that Silva will have the team playing well enough to replicate their finish from last year, and Everton will get 8th. A better 8th than last season's 8th. So a repeat feat for Everton, but will Leicester be able to improve upon last season's accomplishments? By the way, we're officially halfway finished. Leicester is an interesting team actually, as they did finally lose Mahrez to City after it looked to be a sure thing in January, but fell through. So that's a big loss, as he hit double digits in both goals and assists last year for Leicester. After finishing in a respectable 9th last season, Claude Puel has been given the funds to improve upon multiple positions, including 21-year-old James Maddison, an attacking midfielder, right back and Portuguese international Ricardo Pereira, right winger Rachid Ghazal, a fellow Algerian, will try to fill in Mahrez's shoes, and Johnny Evans gives them another option in the centre back position, among other signings. I expect that teams won't enjoy playing against Leicester, with them serving up a couple of minor upsets throughout the season, but managing to only equal their 9th placed finish from last season. I kept that one short for you. You're welcome. Well, apologies to Leicester fans. But anyway, let's head north to the moderator city, Newcastle. After Newcastle had such a strong showing in their last season, despite the turbulence at the club with the will he won't he Mike Ashley sale saga, it's looking like this could be a tough season for the Magpies. It's not as though they haven't brought in any players, as they have made some signings such as Mikel Merino, Yoshi Muto, Fabian Schär, and Martin Dubravka. They also grabbed Jose Salomon Rondon, which is a fun name to say, on loan, among a couple others, though there's not much that excited me as far as acquisitions go, nor does it excite Benitez, who hasn't hidden his frustration due to the lack of funds that he has been given by Mike Ashley, and his players have reportedly begun protesting as well. Apparently they refuse to do their TV spots, their walk-ups, you know? No matter how excellent of a manager he has been for Newcastle in the past, no matter the relative miracle he managed to pull off last season with a 10th placed finish, with a bang average squad, I think this season will be massively difficult, with Newcastle finishing in 15th. Alright, 12 down people, and Southampton is next. The Saints' survival last season came right down to the wire after Mauricio Pellegrino was sacked in March and Mark Hughes was brought in to right the ship. Well, he managed to do so, but Saints fans will be hoping for much better than a scramble for survival again, with big signings such as Yannick Vestergaard, the Danish centre-back from Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Norwegian winger Mohamed El Younousi from FC Basel, whom I am well acquainted with. Shout out to my career mode viewers out there. Saints should be a stronger side on paper than they were last season. Their most notable sale, however, was Dusan Tadic, so take from that what you will. I'm not a massive believer in Mark Hughes, as he came ever so close to being a part of 2 relegations last season, and while I don't think that Southampton will be struggling to keep their heads above water, I don't think that they will do any better than a 14th placed finish. And maybe a cup semi-final or something? We'll throw them a bone there. A team that Southampton found themselves battling for Premier League safety last season, Huddersfield, is next. Huddersfield actually managed to stay 4 points above the drop zone last season, in what was their first season in the Premier League. Steve Mounier banged in the goals for Huddersfield, yet no player managed to crack double digits in the Premier League, with Huddersfield scoring a fairly weak 28 goals, tied for the lowest goal haul in the whole league. Defensively, they often relied upon the both erratic and incredible at times Jonas Lossel, the Danish keeper who started every single match for Huddersfield last season. They have brought in some new faces, namely Terence Kongolo from AS Monaco, as well as his teammate from the Principality club, Adama Diakabe. Kongolo, of course, was sent to Huddersfield on loan last January, and he impressed the manager, David Wagner. Unfortunately, I don't think that Huddersfield will impress the Premier League fans this season, just the vibe I'm getting. And after one exciting first season in the Premier League, the second is all that I think Huddersfield fans will be able to enjoy, as they'll finish in 20th and sent packing to the championship. I'm sorry, Huddersfield fans, but hey, remember, this isn't what I wish to happen, but simply what I think will happen, and I've been wrong before. Next up, Bournemouth. The Cherries' historic rise from the Championship to the Premier League for their first time ever in 2015 marked the beginning of 3 fun-filled seasons for Bournemouth supporters that saw their team go from 16th to 9th and to 12th last season. In those last 3 seasons in the top flight, however, they have conceded 195 goals for an average of 65 goals per season. Not great. They started extremely slowly last season, yet Eddie Howe managed to rally the team just after the halfway point of the season, allowing them to climb as high as 9th at one point. However, I believe that Howe's magic will begin to wear out a bit this season, as the stars from the League One days will begin to fade. Though he has brought in reinforcements, as I mentioned, often his big money signings have failed him, with the one exception being Nathan Ake. Ake leads me to my final point, however. If he is to get injured, then Bournemouth's defense will suffer even further, and I expect them to concede more than their joint worst 67 goals in one season, and will ultimately be sent back down to the Championship, unfortunately. Bournemouth in 19th. I don't know how I feel about that one. That was sort of my bold prediction. But this is the final stretch, guys. Only 5 more teams to go. And next, we have Crystal Palace. We gotta give it up to Roy Hodgson, who absolutely killed it with Crystal Palace last season. A team who looked dead in the water after Frank de Boer got his hands on them. Where de Boer failed, Hodgson excelled, dragging Palace all the way up to a 12th place finish with help from the now highly sought after Wilfried Zaha. He is integral to their season, so it's an absolute must for Crystal Palace to hang on to him until 5 p.m. on August 9th, even if Chelsea are really trying to grab him for £70 million. By the way, I was considering doing a sort of transfer deadline day live type of thing on my channel where, we can all just keep our eyes on the news in the final hour of the window and go over the signings of some of the teams as we go. Any interest in that? Could be a good time. Then again, it could be a letdown in the final hour. Anyways, as of making this video, Ruben Loftus-Cheek was still a Chelsea player, though the Premier League app did list him as a Chelsea player and then changed it to a player that's on loan at Crystal Palace. So it could just be a mistake considering he spent the last season there. You need to update their formats. It could be more to it than this, as the clubs are trying to come to an agreement, apparently. They did bring in Sheku Kouyaté to bolster their midfield options following Johan Kabai's departure, and I do think that Crystal Palace will be decent once again under Roy Hodgson, stealing points from the big boys as they're wont to do, if they can hold on to Zaha. Though even without Zaha, they did well at times last season, and I think that if they do keep him, they'll manage a 12th placed finish. And so, my friends, that means that we only have 4 places left in the standings as we move on to Arsenal. What a crazy season it's going to be for Arsenal fans, as for the first time since 1996, someone other than Arsene Wenger will be trying to master the zippers of the hallowed Arsenal coaching jackets. Unai Emery was the dude brought in to wrestle the zippers after he apparently blew the board of directors away with his interview. Well, fans are hoping he'll be as good at the recruitment and the managing of the team as he is at the conducting of job interviews. Speaking of recruitment, the Gunners brought in Lucas Torreira, who had a strong World Cup following a great season with Sampdoria. Bernd Leno comes in to compete with Peter Cech for the starting spot in goal. Leno didn't have a fantastic year for Leverkusen in his final season, but has been quality in the past. At 26 and for 25 million, he's worth bringing on. Socrates was pulled from Borussia Dortmund. Not sure about him, we'll have to see, as well as Lichtsteiner on a free to add some experience, because boy, does he ever have a lot of it at 34. Oh, and Matteo Guendouzi, who I won't act like I know a lot about, the 19-year-old former Lorient midfielder. I don't know much about him at all. Emery is a manager who has silverware to back up his name, as he won 3 Europa League titles in a row, a Ligue 1 with PSG, as well as 4 domestic cups. However, he failed to take PSG anywhere in the Champions League, and let's be honest, you absolutely should be winning the Ligue 1 with the access to funds you are afforded as a PSG manager. With Sevilla, he had 2 5th-placed finishes and a 7th. I like what I have seen of Arsenal in their preseason, and he does have a decent squad to work with, especially in the attack, so I think Emery will take Arsenal as high as 5th. However, I do think they will win a cup, with the most likely one being the Europa League given Emery's track record, though I could see them winning the EFL Cup as well. So, Arsenal in 5th, as I said, and up next is Manchester United. United for me is the toughest team to call of them all, and it's all down to Jose Mourinho. Given that my parents are Portuguese, I've followed Mourinho for a long time, starting with his UEFA Cup victory over Celtic in 2003 when he was still with Porto. I've seen how incredible he was as a manager, how he would deflect criticism from his players onto himself as he would become the villain to the media, while his players could simply focus on executing on the pitch. His teams have always been defense first, but they could play with expression in the attack when they needed to. And in regards to how they felt about him, the players would run through brick walls for him back in the day, with players saying they would kill for him on the pitch while he was with Chelsea the first time. The reaction of the players when he left Inter Milan, with many of the squad sobbing after the Champions League final, knowing that he was on his way to Real Madrid, I mean, there's no way you would see that from any of the United players now. Why? Because it seems like Jose Mourinho has simply fallen out of love for the game and is completely unbothered about how the fans of United and the players under him feel about him. He went from absorbing criticism from the media to deflecting every single failure onto his squad and never taking the blame himself. For context, here are some very recent quotes from his preseason tour in the USA. A preseason tour that you could tell Mourinho wasn't too into. Quote, "This is not our team. We started the game with almost half of the players who are not even going to belong to our squad on August 9th. The majority of the players that are playing are not going to play. Some of them are not even going to belong to the squad. This is not our squad. Reinforcements? You mean players that I would like to buy? That's another thing. But this is not my squad. This is not even half my squad, or 30% of it. So don't look to this. Man, if you contrast that to what Pep Guardiola had to say about his young players on the preseason tour, where he described what a pleasure it was to work with the academy players who are so hungry to become professionals, and he is honored that he gets to try to help them, and blah 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 blah, it's quite the contrast. Now everyone knows about Mourinho's third season meltdown. After leaving on good terms and with silverware from Porto, every single club besides Inter, where he only spent 2 seasons, has seen Mourinho leave on less than favorable terms. The only improvement to their squad so far has been a creative central midfielder in Fred, who, if all things go well, will strike up a great understanding with Matic and Pogba to help ignite United's attack from the middle of the park. Last season, United did way better than their first under Mourinho, finishing second, scoring more, conceding less, etc. But they were still 19 points behind City and ended up losing to each of the promoted teams. I don't think they'll be as good as last season. I do think it's going to be rough for them, but they will end up finishing in the top 4. Now, will Mourinho last the entire season? I think so, and I think that he's deserving of being given a chance. But come May or June of 2019, I think that could be the end of Mourinho at United. He could win the English Cup or the FA Cup, but 4th is as far as I think United will climb in the standings. I don't know how I feel about that one. Like I said, United was really hard to call, but I'm going to stick with my gut on that one. So that leaves only 2 places to be observed, and we'll of course be looking at the runners-up first. Liverpool. If I was to give out an award to the team who has improved their squad the most in the offseason, it would have to go to Liverpool. After Liverpool fans started to see the fruits of Jurgen Klopp's labor last season with the electric attack of Salah, Mane, and Firmino, rock and roll football as the media loves to call it. Then, last January, they brought in Virgil van Dijk, the most expensive defender in football history, and alongside Lovren, Liverpool's defense, which was nothing short of a massive meme before, started to look a little more solid. However, Liverpool's ongoing issues in the goalkeeping department, though Loris Karius was getting better and better as time went on, from about January till sometime in May, was hit with a massive exclamation point following 2 blunders in the Champions League final that ultimately cost Liverpool. Now, whether Karius had a concussion or not, the rumors that a new keeper was the #1 priority became truth following the World Cup, as Liverpool added the world's most expensive goalkeeper in football history, Alisson Becker. If Alisson can perform as he did for Roma, then I can see him securing anywhere from 9 to 12 points for Liverpool just via his own heroics. Liverpool's midfield wasn't exactly a massive problem area for them, as they were getting by with Henderson, Milner, and Gini Wijnaldum just fine. But nevertheless, Naby Keita has finally arrived, as his passing, vision, and graft will be a massive boon to their midfield, and in turn their attack due to his fantastic service, while Fabinho will add some defensive solidity as well. There's depth in their midfield now, if injuries are to strike, and depth and quality, which is the main thing. For me, the sleeper hit of the summer for Liverpool may just be Xherdan Shaqiri, who they brought in for a reported £13.5 million. If you had any doubts as to whether he would fit into Klopp's style of play, just look to the goal he scored against Serbia in the World Cup. Now, you add all of these things together with the ethos that Klopp is instilling in his fast, talented squad, and I expect Liverpool to push for the title right until the end, or at least close to, but unfortunately, just fall short in 2nd place. To who? Well, there's only one team left, and that is City. For me, City had the strongest squad last season, and with Riyad Mahrez adding further depth to an already richly talented attack, including the likes of Aguero, Jesus, Bernardo Silva, David Silva, Leroy Sané, who will feel that he has a point to prove after his snub for the World Cup, Raheem Sterling, with Kevin De Bruyne spraying the balls about in the back, it's good. Add on top of that, Mahrez. I'm expecting Phil Foden to have a great impact this season and really step into the limelight for City, at least in some of the smaller matches for them. Defensively, things will be relatively the same, with Guardiola having one of the best problems for a manager, multiple center backs that have proven themselves to be more than capable. Last year, John Stones only made 16 starts for City in the Premier League, and after a strong World Cup with England, he'll be challenging for the starting spot. Kompany is also seemingly back to full fitness after missing the better part of the first half of last season, as he had a great turnout for Belgium as well. Aymeric Laporte had limited opportunities after transferring to City in January of 2018, so now that he is more settled within the club, he will be yet another option. And that's not even mentioning Nicolas Otamendi, who has been City's best centre back for the past few seasons. Also, it gets better. With Benjamin Mendy back, Guardiola won't have to rely on Fabian Delph as his main choice as a left back, who was actually decent for the Citizens despite being played out of his first choice position. But Mendy has looked good in preseason and will add another dimension to that team. With Mahrez being the only signing City has made this offseason so far, Guardiola will be looking to nurture his team and help them to evolve into the dominant side that they are capable of becoming, while also pushing to challenge in the Champions League. Last season's quarterfinals exit to Liverpool won't be good enough, and while I do believe that the Champions League will be the next logical step for this club to focus on conquering, I don't think they will lose sight completely of the Premier League. Will they be as dominant as last season's record-breaking campaign? I mean, likely not, as that's an incredibly hard feat to replicate. But if Guardiola has had one thing nailed down during his managerial career, it has been the conquest of league titles. There's only been 2 seasons where he has failed to see his team to the top of the league: his final season with Barca and his first with Man City. It won't be as comfortable as last season, but I think City will be lifting the trophy come May 2019 and will have a deep run in the Champions League as well. Meaning that my table looks as follows. City in first, with Liverpool, Tottenham, United, Arsenal, and Chelsea rounding out the top 6, with Cardiff, Bournemouth, and Huddersfield dropping down into the Championship. And there you have it. As a little bonus, also throw in that Mo Salah is going to win the Golden Boot once again. Will he score as many as last season across all competitions? Perhaps not, but I think he will still be dominant, at least in the Premier League. As for the PFA Player of the Year, I feel like Kevin De Bruyne will add some more goals to his game and will take the crown from Salah this time as he leads City to a second straight title. And the Young Player of the Year will be Ruben Neves. I was going to say Bernardo Silva, but he actually turns 24 on the day the Premier League starts, meaning he's not eligible, as you have to be 23 the day the Premier League starts. He's just a day off. All right, guys, thanks again for watching this video. And if you want plenty more content, then be sure to subscribe for more. My name is Adrian. This is Rabona TV, and I hope you enjoy the season. Peace.